was talking about was, how do you recognize bad leadership? I think he knew the answer, but he just wanted to get my feedback on it, which is a great attribute to have. Ask a question to that you know the answer to, maybe try to match up your answers. And I told him, I said, it's interesting that you asked that, because I've had some really good coaches, some phenomenal guys, and guys that have had different coaching styles. One of the coaches I've mentioned on this podcast, I didn't see eye to eye with him, and it was because I was immature and he was the mature one in the room. Now, when I think about horrendous coaches that I've had, it's been ones that have not been able to relate, or they've shown their emotions to a point that becomes distracting to the club.
Let's finish it.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms, and this is a show about people, culture, and how to create a winning lifestyle. This episode is going to be completely on people and culture, like hard in the paint, to the extent of everyone has seen this type of person at some point. If you've had a lot of exposure to sports, corporate world, you name it, and every group has this person. So before we jump into the episode, Dave has a nice blue Under Armour polo and golf shorts and pants.
No, it's jeans.
Oh, it's jeans.
Yeah.
I was kind of thrown off. I didn't see the bottom half. I can only see the top half, so I assumed that
it's a mystery.
Because it is a Friday, and Fridays are your golf days.
It's Friday because I don't teach lessons or train guys in the afternoon, so I get to actually wear adult clothes, not just my sweatpants and my sweatshirt or my training shirt.
Do you or do you not golf on Fridays?
Well, I would love to, yes. I don't get the opportunity to all the time. If I had my perfect world, I would love to. Every time it's nice out, I mean, geez, there's a course 2 minutes from us now.
Yeah.
So I would totally just pack the sticks in the old club or in the old car and hop on down there.
So this topic that we're going into is all about leadership.
Okay.
You've had many of coaches.
Yeah, a lot.
You've had some bosses.
Not too many, but a couple.
Yes. You recognize good leadership versus bad leadership.
I think I can spot it.
And you are in a leadership position.
I am.
What to you classifies as a horrendous leader? Let's go the opposite. What classifies a good leader? Let's put it that way. Let's go positive. I don't want this to be like a negative Nancy conversation.
Well, I think both questions you can give, I think you're going to get unique answers from different people, because I think everybody sees leadership a little bit differently. Everyone reacts to certain styles differently, has different expectations, some, like tough leadership, nice leadership, whatever it might be. But I would guess, to me, if you're asking personally, a good leader is going to be somebody who can bring everyone together, that can get everybody working together on the same page. You view that guy or girl as a friend, as a mentor, as someone you look up to, as someone that literally you're going to go to war with, that you would do anything for, because in turn, they would do that for you. That's how I view good leadership. And I think that you can look at the best examples, in sports or in business or in life in general, the closest group of friends, right? There's that catalyst there in all of those situations that literally, I guess, knows how to steer the ship, if you will, in the right direction. She has those people, those lifelong followers that no matter what are going to be there.
In baseball, you have players, coaches,
Yep.
and coaches, and then you have front office coaches.
At the major league level?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could
or
say
even this level?
It's just analogy.
Okay.
So, players coach is someone that literally they have a really good relationship with the players. Their first thought is always players first. Mm-hmm. Coach's coach is someone that's able to relate really well with the coaching staff. He lets his coaches do the coaching, who ends up being, they are the player's coach, so like his assistant coaches. But he's very good at relating to his coaching staff. And then you have the coaches to front office, where the coach doesn't really see eye to eye with the coaching staff or see eye to eye with the players. He just pushes the buttons at the right time for the front office staff, whether that's an admin side at the collegiate level. Make sure that you're dotting your T's, dotting your I's, crossing your T's.
Dot your T's if you want.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's a podcast. We're gonna F up. So, anyways, but for me, the reason that this conversation is coming up is because I had a convo with one of our directors about just leadership styles, and one of the things that he was talking about was, how do you recognize bad leadership? I think he knew the answer, but he just wanted to get my feedback on it, which is a great attribute to have. Ask a question to that you know the answer to, maybe try to match up your answers. And I told him, I said, it's interesting that you asked that, because I've had some really good coaches, some phenomenal guys, and guys that have had different coaching styles. One of the coaches I've mentioned on this podcast, I didn't see eye to eye with him, and it was because I was immature and he was the mature one in the room. The other one was very relatable to me. I was a guy that felt like I had a chip on my shoulder. I was always the person that was overlooked, and he felt the same way. And so obviously that's an easy way to relate. It was basically hand-in-hand combat. Let's go attack the world together, right? And he attracted players like that into his team. So all of us were like that. And that's what made his team really good. Now, when I think about horrendous coaches that I've had, it's been ones that have not been able to relate, or they've shown their emotions to a point that becomes distracting to the club. And when I think about the maturity level of a coach, and again, I'm always trying to grow, I'm always trying to learn, I'm always trying to make my craft a little bit better. And now moving into this direction of, I'm not necessarily coaching on an everyday basis, I'm actually working with our coaches to make sure that they're coaching at the top level. So it seems like I'm more of like being a coach's coach rather than a player's coach. And I think that you have to, there's intellectual maturity and there's emotional maturity. When you think about intellectual maturity, it's someone that is able to rattle off facts. Like if you look at the History Channel, what's that show? Pawn Stars?
Pawn Stars?
Yeah, Pawn Stars. Where the guy's able to just rattle off like, oh, that's from like 1767.
Right.
Abraham Lincoln literally wiped his butt with this document. Yeah, and that's why this costs $1 million. Right.
Okay.
That's intellectual maturity, being able to know facts and being able to rattle it off. Right.
Okay.
Or being able to have like my grammar. My grammar is, I don't have an expanded vocabulary.
Don't cut yourself short, Spiker.
There's better people out there. But being able to use different types of words inside of the conversation, not using the same word over and over again. That's intellectual maturity. Yep. Emotional maturity is totally different. You can be intellectual mature, but you could have the emotional maturity of a 5-year-old. I've seen those type of people, right? Like a good example is someone that is super smart in the classroom and then brags about it to all of their friends because they want to be accepted. They haven't really realized their shortcomings, and they haven't realized that how to relate to people. That's emotional immaturity. So when I think of a really good coach, they're intellectually, yes, they have to be there for the game. They have to know the nuts and bolts. But if I would label a good leader and a person that I would follow into the fires, they have to be emotionally mature, without a doubt. 100%.
Well, I mean, I kind of think of my own career, and I'm by no stretch of the imagination calling myself like a good leader. I think some people would say I am and whatever. But I think at the start, I thought that everything about coaching was about X and O's. Just literally putting up the best lineups, teaching the best drills.
Strategy.
Yeah, basically strategy.
Intellectual.
Yeah. That was everything I thought about coaching. So I lived and died on those answers. And I don't know if I butted heads with some of the players, but, when they didn't react the way I wanted them to, or they didn't execute the way I wanted them to, it was kind of tough on them, right? And I was like, well, why didn't you do this? This is what you have to do in this situation.
Your connection's probably off.
We've talked about this and whatnot. And generally, I bet I probably ended up fracturing some certain relationships, and I went about it the wrong way. And as I got more mature, I started to worry less about that side of it, because you have to have it, right? You have to be good with that. But I started worrying way more about the person and connection, because when I could connect with that player on a one-to-one level and learn what makes him tick or her, and what drives them, and how to communicate to them, because there's different styles of communication to different players. And then if I could bring that person in on my side, and then get another one and another one and another one, and learn different aspects about them, and then kind of that shapes the way you approach the team. I ended up spending, if it's 100% of the season, I spent 80, 90% of my season and my time on that side of it, because I felt that was so much more important than how I wrote the lineup that day, or how that guy's swing was looking, or what drills were we going to do based on the faults of what we just had in this game, which those are important. Again, I'm not trying to put those down on the pedestal, but I shifted my focus way more towards the emotional side.
Which you can make that argument, is that you don't have to necessarily be completely intellectually mature, because, again, you're always going to be growing, you're always going to be learning, but the side of it that has to be developed, and that I think this comes from someone that's able to develop leaders, is someone that's able to show them what emotional maturity looks like. Not being able to throw your glove in a tantrum. I always think back to the pressure situation. How much pressure can you take to the point that you can't take it anymore and you emotionally shut down? Mm-hmm. Whether that's you going into a silence and being literally, you just are frozen and you can't get out of that freeze state, or you have a huge tantrum and start attacking people left and right and setting blame. I think those are so important when it comes to a leader, and when they show there's a difference between showing passion and showing an emotional side. And you can tell the difference by the situation that's being brought forth. So if let's just use baseball, for example, if it's cold, it's windy, it's a miserable day, it's cloudy, you had to wake up early, and you are literally out there grinding it out and not complaining about it, mm-hmm. Your emotional level of maturity is pretty darn high. Now let's just add another piece of that. Same day, umpire doesn't give you strikes. That's another added pressure. Same day, you just get annihilated on the mound. 4 home runs off you. You don't get calls. You have 4 home runs hit off you, and it's cold, it's wet, it's cloudy. You're miserable. What's your reaction?
Well, I think that's what a good coach prepares you for. I think a good coach talks to you about all that. That failure is a part of the game. We talk about it all the time. It's not a if, it's a when. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen a lot, especially as you grow up through the youth ranks of high school and beyond. It's just going to happen. So all those moments where you fail and you show emotion as a player and you lose your cool and everything else like that, those are pivotal teaching moments that a good coach can spot, and that a good coach will talk to you about. And talk to you about how you're supposed to react in those situations, how you're supposed to move on from those situations, and just basically that there's an understanding that that's going to happen to you, right? I don't want to label it a bad coach, but maybe an uninformed coach.
I wouldn't say they're a bad coach.
I don't want to label it a bad coach.
I don't think you can label them as a bad coach, because that's a Pandora's box that we could open up.
And that's I don't want to say
I would say that the maturity level is just not there yet.
Yeah.
They're growing.
Yeah,
they're learning.
for sure. That type of a coach would probably look at that situation and kind of react negatively, like, again, like how I did. right? Why'd you do that? You knew that was happening. Why'd you act that way? Why'd you do that? And just basically like light that player up for maybe the satisfactory of I got to get that off my chest, or just because you don't understand how else to react in that situation. And if you go that route, you literally lose that player right there. Like, I don't think people understand that. There's a certain level of trust, and that trust takes a long time to build up. If you ever truly want to get through to a player, well, again, whether you're teaching them a skill or you're teaching them something about a life lesson or something that's going to help them just overall, you have hours upon hours upon hours of work you have to put in to build that trust up. Like, because there's a protective coat on people, and they are not going to let you in until they trust you. Now, once you're in, man, you can run wild with what you inform them and teach them about. But until then, you're out. If you come at them hot like that and kind of back them into a corner, most people are going to put that shell back up. And now you've got to work double time to get back in, right?
Well, it's also knowing your player. Like, some players, you have to get into them. You have to roll into
For
them.
sure.
But then there's I would say vast majority of them, they'll shut down for that.
But it's how you do it.
Yeah.
It's the how. It's yes, you have to have some sort of authority there, right? Because if you don't, they're going to walk all over you. Like, if I get on you, I want you to know why I'm doing it. I'm not just doing it to get my rocks off, okay? I'm doing it because I want something better for you. That is a situation where you have to understand that you did this wrong, and here's why, and here's how you need to react differently. And that's where I think most of those relationships go wrong. The coach doesn't maybe inform the player why he's saying these things. It's just a reaction. It's just a call to action. I'm yelling at you right now because of this situation that happened. Maybe a coach would be better off if they were to inform, this is why we're talking about this. This is why this situation is occurring. I'm here for you. In all honesty, if I didn't bring this up and I didn't come to you in a stern manner, I'd be doing you a disservice. You would not be getting better in this situation. You would just be going on and not understanding that this situation was wrong. Maybe that's how you go about it.
It's observing. It's having empathy. It's being able to identify your strengths. Again, all these things that we're mentioning is like, it's not like we're like 100% all the time really good at it.
Nope.
I mean, just thinking about, so to give you guys a little insight on what we do on a daily basis is that we get in here super early. We get all of our emails and projects done, and then we have to go out and teach lessons for 3-4 hours. Mm-hmm. Sometimes do training. Some days when we go out there, it's tough for us because we just put in a full day's work. Now we got to go teach. And for teachers out there, they know that feeling. Like, teaching is at a whole different level when it comes to energy and how you approach it, because you have different players, different age groups, and energy is required for those certain age groups. So if I have an 8-year-old, my energy level has to be pretty high. If I have a 14-year-old, I can start relaxing a little bit and being more of, I don't know how to put it, I can be more precise. I can talk more how I normally do. I can really rely on them to make the adjustment pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And there are some days when I go in there and I'm just mentally exhausted. I'm just like, I don't want to be in this cage. And then there's other days where I love being in that cage. But I try extremely hard. When I was younger in this game, I was very, I don't know how to put it. I was very short-tempered. I was very short with my clients. I was very short with my players. And I would just get so mad. I'd be like, why don't you get this? Now it's to a point where I have to rely on them to be like, if you fail, you fail. It's okay. We'll figure it out at some point. And that is so hard to do when I'm a perfectionist at heart, and each player is totally different. And when you have a one-on-one dude or a one-on-one girl, and you're literally trying to go for 30 minutes, that 30 minutes can either last an eternity or it can last like 5 minutes. And some days it lasts for eternity, and some days it lasts for 5 minutes. But I'm going to make sure that they don't see that I'm dealing with some mental pain right now because I have these projects I have to do. I'm going to make sure that I deliver to them what they came here for, which is I want to get better. I want to make sure that I'm getting some type of education, either that's understanding my load and stride, understanding how to get my barrel to contact, understanding how to get my hands out in front. So when we talk about these things, understand we're talking about the things that we actually struggled with, and we're trying to relate this to a situation that I was approached with our director. And I think it's going to be extremely valuable to you guys who are listening that you could probably relate to some of these things and be like, oh man, I never thought about it that way. That's my whole point on this episode, which is understanding that we're constantly learning how to be mature intellectually, but also be mature emotionally and understand who's on the receiving end of, if I freak out on this person, what's going to happen? Because it's me that has to vent out. It's not to the benefit of that person, which is the wrong thing to do. You have to be, what does that person need? Which can drain the living
which is hard
hell out of you.
That's hard. I mean, that's the $1 million question. That's like, I've beat my head against a wall 1 million times trying to figure that out. I mean, sometimes you don't. I mean, just 100% you don't, right? You work really hard and it just doesn't work. I mean, I try to say this all the time. I think I'm a good coach. I think I have a lot of value. I think I can help a lot of people.
Which is why you're in it.
Sure. But I'm not for everyone. I'm not.
And that's something that someone has to understand, is that you are not for everyone.
Right.
And you might rub them off the wrong way.
There are just some people that there's no way I can sit here and say I am 100% for everyone. I don't care who you are. No matter what age, what skill level, I can fix you and help you. That sounds like a political ad. There's no way I can say that because it's not true.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I can do. Everybody who comes to me, whether it's in a team setting, an individual setting, whatever it might be, I can guarantee you this. I'm going to try really, really hard to see if I am a fit. And then I'll be very honest with you and tell you if I'm not.
Well, we saw it with the 17U group this year. Some guys gravitated way more towards you, and then some guys didn't gravitate towards me at all. They probably don't prefer me.
But again, the whole idea is we're going to work for it.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I'm not going to give up on that person.
Yeah.
Like, even though I know that player is like, I really don't like Spiker, I'm still not giving up on you.
Right.
Like, I might try to spin it another way, try to not talk to you, maybe not talk to you, but provide action where I hit ground balls to you, or I give you some front toss, or I'll throw with you on the side. And it might be really uncomfortable for you, but I'm just trying to make sure that you get better.
Yeah. And I think that's, when you break it down, like, the whole idea of this topic is kind of just, finding out who the right people are and who are in it for the right intentions. I think that is so important. When we talk about leadership, every solid leader, and I don't care what area of this life you're talking about, with sports business, we always talk about it. I don't care. The commonality between them is that they have the right intentions. They are there for the right reasons. You can see the people who are in it for the short-term benefits only. Like that win on Saturday at all costs. I don't care about you. I'm here to win this game. Yep. So I don't care.
If you don't get the job done,
go
you're
sit
out.
in the corner, see you later.
Yeah, if you don't get the job done, we'll get another guy.
Or you fail once, bye.
Yep.
Or you show whatever. See ya.
Well, that's what I liked about Coach Gutton, was we butted heads so bad. I would love to get his take someday. I've never asked him this, but it got to a point where, like, we did not like to be in the same room with each other. It was very I don't know how he felt. I just felt like I did not want to be around that guy at all. But to him, he never gave up. He kept on coming in. He never said, well, looks like you're going to get released, or, well, looks like you're not going to be playing here for that long. Well, looks like you're not getting a degree from here. He never said that. He just kept working with me, and in his own little way, finally got to a point where it broke the ice. And I love that guy to death because he's able to fight. He fights for you no matter what. Like I don't know if the guys in that clubhouse really realize like who that guy is. He's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. So for me on this conversation is keep battling for your players and keep growing as a coach and finding ways to help them and to identify those bad. If I'm a player, identifying those bad leaders is if they do give you that. Well, looks like you're gonna get cut. Looks like we should get another player.
Well, it's maybe they're treating you like an asset, not a human being.
Exactly.
Right. That's the issue. If they're treating you like a number, like you literally, none of your human nature means anything to them. You are either producing or you're not. It's like I'll give this stereotype because it's out there. The youth coach that has massive turnover every single year and is fighting for those trophies every weekend. I mean, no offense. If you want to do that, by all means, that's up to you. That's not my style. It's
the team that is switching up players each weekend, and it's the team that's searching for, like, this is an old school. I don't know if they still do this anymore, but chasing points.
Yeah,
like we're just gonna chase points. If you don't play this weekend, you're out. Or we'll fly in a pitcher, and if he doesn't do it, we're not going to ask them to come back ever again.
Yeah, I'm sure it's still going on. I just choose to not associate it with it because I don't believe that that's what it's about.
Yeah,
I don't believe that I don't care if you're 9, 14, 18. College is a little different because you're technically under scholarship and professional. Now, that's professional baseball, right? So that's a totally different story. You are getting paid, so you better get the job done.
You are an asset.
Yeah, you are an asset at that point.
At that point, you're an asset.
Unfortunately, but there's still, even at that level, there's humanality to it. There is that is taken in consideration. They just don't look at you purely as that. But at the youth level where we live, that's crazy to think about. Go ahead.
What would you do if you had a kid, your kid, future David Burkby Jr.?
Okay, I have a kid.
You do?
No. If I have a kid, I'm explaining.
I
do not have a kid.
I did not know that you had a kid.
I do not have a kid.
What's his name?
Do not have a kid.
Or her name. Sorry.
I got it.
What would you do if you ended up seeing that like at the start? Like, oh man, this guy's really good. This coach is fine. Like, I really enjoy him, and it was a good first impression. But then over time, you start kind of seeing some red flags pop up. Mm-hmm. You start seeing that he's yelling for no reason. It's not yelling for passion. It's a yelling at, I'm verbally abusing these players.
Yep.
And there's a difference between being too hard and hard enough,
sure.
right? How would you approach it?
So, actually, and I think I shared this with you today.
Your kid actually had this?
No. I saw an interview, and I'll give you my idea, but I saw an interview from Rob Friedman, who's Pitching Ninja on Twitter, and he was interviewing Al Leiter, who's a former big league all-star, 15 years.
Awesome interview, by the way.
And Al's son, Jack, is in, he's a sophomore or something at Vandy, and he's amazing. The guy's sick. And so anyhow, Rob asks Al, can you explain a little bit of like Jack's growing up? How did you approach how he found his youth team, or did he always play for the best? Was he always the best? And Al kind of talked about it where it was like, well, I wanted him to play at a level where he was always getting, competition. He wasn't the best on the team. I didn't want him to be the best on the team. That wasn't really for him. He was a little bit better than rec, but he would have got swallowed up in like major level baseball. So I kind of found him that middle ground where he was always batting 6th, 7th, 8th on the team. He was like the 4th best pitcher, and he had to really compete and learn about the game a little bit. And he goes, when I was watching him play, I didn't say a word. I never said anything. And I just wanted to watch him compete. I just wanted to watch how he went about the game. And then honestly, after the game was over and, I never really even talked to him about it. Maybe 2 days later, I'd ask him about something certain, if we had a conversation going, but I never brought it up because I didn't want to be that person who was always surrounding, the comments about, well, why didn't you do this? Or what were you thinking there? Because that's his career. If he wants to approach me, now let's do it. Let's talk. But I'm not going to be the one to approach him. Now, going forward, if I see that and I'm a parent and I am a firm believer that I'm going to and it depends on how old my son is or daughter at this situation, because if you're super young and an adult is being in that situation, well, that's totally different. And I think we'd all react a little bit differently to that, right? That's a situation where if it's that toxic, there's no reason to go another day with it. And I'll do it respectfully. There's no need to blow up in a youth scene and just be like throwing off curse words and making a scene that does nobody any good. But if it's a super toxic environment, well, there's no reason for that to happen tomorrow. Life is too short. There's so many other things we can do. There's other avenues we can take. But the way I would go about it, if it was me being a parent, and this is kind of the coach in me, okay, because I've been through those situations. One, understand what I'm there for. I'm there to watch my child have fun and compete and learn a game. That's my primary reason for being there. It's not to coach my child, to yell at them after every pitch. Make sure you step straight. Make sure you keep your head on the ball. I'm not sitting there to do that. And I know where the parents come from in that standpoint too. They just want success. They just want that child to literally have a great time.
Yep, experience success, yeah.
And I'm not there. I'm not a parent, but I can understand, I can guess that deep down inside, they're sitting there so nervous because they want their child to literally have the best time ever. That's all they want.
Yep.
That's all parents want, is for them to literally succeed. They hate failure because when your child fails, I can only think that you have that little bit of pain down inside you that you're like, oh, man, dude, all I want to do is go give you a hug.
Yeah.
Tell you it's okay.
If you're going 0 for 4 with the Golden Sombrero it's that car ride is probably super miserable.
Yeah. And so I totally get it. But if I was a parent, and first off, I know we're going on a different tangent, but I would be there and I would try to be as quiet as I can to let my child learn, because my child needs to learn success on his or her own and needs to learn failure on his or her own. And then to a certain extent, they need to learn how to deal with a coach in those situations too, because we're all going to deal with different coaches, different bosses, different situations.
Because the last thing that you want is the parent to jump in and fight for the kid, and the kid doesn't stand on his own 2 feet.
Again, I look at our roles. My child is a player. The coach is the coach. I am the parent.
And you are a fan.
And I'm a fan.
You're not involved.
I'm not a coach at this certain stance. Even if this situation is I have a long background as a coach, I'm not his coach.
But you
are her coach.
You are a mentor, though.
I am. So I would be. I always want to know what's going on, but I'm not going to bother that coach. I'm not going to sit there and tear down everything that they say. My answer would be, okay, so let's say my child came up to me after a game and I saw that there was a situation where the coach was talking to him, or maybe he or she is older and they had a little bit of it was a tough situation for my child, right? Didn't do something right. Coach had to get on him. Maybe we start to have that conversation. I'm not going to be the one to bring it up, but maybe that situation comes up, in the car ride or 2 days after. Okay, so what was the situation? What did coach say? Okay, so coach said, now there's a lot of things that I know from a coaching standpoint that is acceptable, and I know why they're doing it. And I would firmly watch to see how that coach is approaching it. Is that coach approaching at it, like we've talked about, just to yell, just to demean, just to bring down, just to tear that person down? Because I don't like that. It's
a consistency thing.
Yeah,
so if it's like
over,
if it's one day, he could have had a bad day at work.
It's over and over and over again. Then me and the coach will have a talk, right? And again, it'll be very.
But at what
nice.
point do you step in?
I guess when I see it as the negative outweighs the positive, and it's pretty heavy, right? Because I do believe.
So there's no specific time frame. It's just a series of events.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's at a point where my child literally is losing interest in that sport because of it. Like there's examples where it's like, I don't want to go. Yeah, I don't want to go to practice day. I don't want to go to this game.
But maybe that gets to a point where you gotta roll into it and be like, okay, why don't you want to go?
Sure, and that's a totally different conversation.
Then it comes to a point. Well, they point out certain reasons. Well, this, and this, and then coach, and then okay, wait a minute, let's go after that coach. What's going on with this coach? And then being able to guide them through. Well, have you talked to him?
Yep.
Have you done this?
Yep.
Have you done that? I feel like there has to be steps taken by the player before the coach can actually be approached from you as the parent.
Yep.
So many times we've had this conversation before when parents approaching coaches before they should.
Mm-hmm.
And then it puts a negative outlook on them and a negative outlook on the player,
Yep.
and the player doesn't learn how to stand on his own 2 feet.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally a situation where I don't think any party wins in that one, because the coach feels like, oh, the parents just hawkeyeing me and just they're going to come in at any second. So now I even second guess, like, how can I treat that player?
You start second guessing how you walk.
Like, seriously, like, I mean, it's like to a moment, it's like where I know those eyes are on me. If Billy's up and he's in a situation,
you almost get to a point like, dear God, please get a hit.
Well, and it's, it's not good for anyone. And I've kind of gotten to a point where it's like, I know I'm a good person. I know I'm a good coach, and I'm going to teach the values I teach. And again, I'm not for everyone, and I'll have that mature conversation. But it's definitely not good for the player either, because now the player doesn't feel comfortable around you. The player just saw that altercation. The player's like, oh, this is not.
It divides the player too. Like, if you think about it, like emotionally, the player looks at that and they see that conversation's happening, and they're like, oh crap.
They hate it. They don't love it. They're not sitting there with popcorn like, yeah, get him, Dad. They're not doing that.
Get that coach.
No, they're not doing that. They're literally,
Mom, jump in there. Why haven't you jumped in yet?
Yeah, they're literally sitting there like, oh no, like hand over their face, and then, like, some of the teammates are like, why are your parents doing this, or why was the coach doing this? And that's just this big drama thing that's what kills some youth sports teams. I mean, it just kills it, and that honestly takes kids out of the games. I mean, it's bad. It's not needed or warranted. And unfortunately, people see that side of youth sports way more than they see the good side of it.
Well, it's because, again,
it's
if
the
you
ESPN highlight.
catch that on camera, that's the thing that goes crazy on social media. It's not little Johnny hitting a home run.
No.
Like, only a few people are going to share that.
Right.
But if you get an altercation with an umpire, or you get an altercation with a coach, or a coach acts completely out of line, that's the thing that catches on social media.
Yeah.
And then you get the whole keyboard warriors like, oh, I can't believe this organization.
Yep.
That's the thing that catches because it's negative. Yep. But going back to the original, which is the leadership side of things, when you don't have a coach that has that leadership quality, at what point do you just pull the plug and you say, all right, either A, we're moving away from this team, or B, we're just picking a whole nother sport because he's toasted from this sport.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I don't.
You don't get to that point.
Hopefully I don't get it to that point.
Yeah.
I really want to exhaust all options before that ever happens, because that just sucks on all accounts. That's terrible. I mean, you got to understand that the level of buildup that gets to that point for a kid, there's so many negative situations that have occurred that should have been stopped or avoided. That should never happen. So hopefully it doesn't get to B. But to A, I'm certainly hoping that, one, there's enough support system around that individual, that player, that they can, one, make it through the season, because I do believe that a lot of times you should be there for your teammates too. I think there's a certain level of value to that you committed to this team. That was something my parents told me all the time, that, hey, you committed to this team. Okay, so there are gonna be tough situations, but
You
your
honor
teammates,
that commitment, right?
Your teammates need you, and you're there. And if you're not there, you're letting them down too, because it is a team sport. And sometimes we forget that we're all in it for individual reasons at times, but it is a team sport. It's not golf. Okay?
Yeah,
It's a
you
little
can't.
different.
Yeah, you can't quit in the middle of the season because then you're letting down all those other guys, and you've gotten to a point where that coach might not be mature, but then you made a complete immature move by just literally cutting it, cutting the cord.
And me as a coach's standpoint, let's say I have that kid that we just keep butting heads. I am still going to try him to be like, listen, we're going to get through this, okay? We're going to end this season the right way. And then at that point, obviously we're not a fit for each other. Mm. But there's still a right way to go about it.
I think that's a big point for parents, too, is like you are in a leadership role, too. And the maturity, you got three people there. You got the coach, you got the player, you got the parent, and the maturity level of all three of those are being tested at that point.
Yep. And listen, again, I'll preface it. There are situations that dictate, see you later tomorrow. I get it. Those situations, we all know, okay? But to get to that level, that point, there has to be so many negative situations that just keep occurring, generally speaking. And there are so many points that I call them teaching moments that I think people just lose out on those. They don't view it that way. They view it as negative outcomes rather than outcomes to teach how to deal with adversity. Because that is something that I end up talking about way more nowadays with players. I mean, honestly, that's like now that we're working in the season and I start to hear results of how it happened, I spend half the time talking to them about, okay, how'd you react to that? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? Because I think I understand that one single skill of dealing with adversity and understanding it will literally project you further than any athletic skill I think I can teach you.
Soft skills play out farther than hard skills.
Yeah. And it carries over. It carries over into a lot of different aspects.
I always view it like this. I view it as like if we're in a big room, you can either be a child versus child or adult versus the child. Whoever can become the adult first wins out. Mm-hmm. And people are going to gravitate towards the adult than the child. And in many cases, it could be the player that's the adult in the room. Mm-hmm. Definitely could be. Or it could be the coach that's the adult in the room, and that's really good leadership, and they have a control on the team. That's when really good teams function really well with good coaching. Mm-hmm. But when you have a team can also function if you have a parent that is an adult and is able to teach the child how to be an adult, because then what happens is that players gravitate towards that leadership, because humans innately, someone has to lead. You can't go into a group and there's not a leader. I mean, look at how geese fly. They fly in a V.
Yeah.
They're flying in a direction. Yeah. Now, what happens if they flew in just a straight line? They're not getting anywhere. They have no idea where they're going. There's no leader.
Right.
So us, with human nature, there's going to be a leader by default. And you can either take the reins of that, or you could have a whole bunch of children, and whoever is the king child wins. Mm-hmm. And that's not a good recipe for success.
It doesn't work out.
Without a doubt, it doesn't work out.
Yep. Seen it a million times. Never works out.
What is your closing pitch on this episode?
We went off into a lot of tangents, which was kind of cool. I like it when conversations like this go those routes, because you never know what one example can lead to, and you never know where it's going to go. So I enjoyed it. Two, I think that if we're trying to identify leadership, I go back to the idea that if you're watching a team sport, and you're watching the way the players interact with each other, you're watching the way the players interact with the coach, you're watching the way the players interact with the opposition, you can certainly identify some key characteristics in good leadership. You can see that the players, again, will do anything for each other. They're not all out there on the so-called island of me, just worrying about themselves and their own personal outcomes. They're literally living and dying on their friend or their teammates' successes. Okay, so you can identify that. You can identify the relationship that the coach has. That player, when being talked to or when being coached or anything, is hanging on every word that coach has, and that again, that coach can almost go any route they want. They can get on you, and you know that they're doing it for a right reason. The coach can praise you. They know that you're doing it for the right reason. The coach can do certain things with teaching, and you know that they're doing it for the right reason. And thirdly, the fact that every person, this is the key, would go to war for anyone else. And literally, this is my brother, this is my sister, this is my team. That's the ultimate type of leadership that I think is like the peak. That is Mount Everest of coaching, to where if you can get that type of loyalty out of a team sport, then that's what I kind of look for and strive to do in my own profession.
One thing that you mentioned that we didn't really go deep on was the commitment part of it. When you commit to something, you have a time frame. Let's just say a team. I'm going to make a commitment for 1 full year. So I agree. Once I accept the position, I'm going to give you 1 full year, and then after that, I can reevaluate and then make a new decision.
Mm-hmm.
So many guys, I wouldn't say so many, it's a small percentage, but it's becoming more relevant just because of the world that we live in with immediate results, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to pull the plug a little bit too early. I think commitment is a huge thing, and it's a breeding ground for leadership, especially in tough circumstances. And I gave you the geese example where if they were flying in a horizontal line, they wouldn't know where they were going because there's not a leader and there's not someone that can move up to the top and start leading the pack and then come back, right? I also view it like a wolf pack, where if wolves are traveling, the leader is behind, not in the front, and the weak are in the front. And I feel that's a good analogy for this conversation, because a leader is actually behind on a lot of circumstances when we're dealing with the team, because you are a mentor and you're trying to make sure that everyone's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about a player, you have to, and again, the player could be completely mature. I've had players that were just light years ahead of everybody else when it came to maturity level, and just like, holy cow, I think you're way mature than I am right now.
Sure.
Like they just think about things a little bit differently, right?
Yep.
And when you have those guys, you lean on them because that's a second leader on that field. I feel like we have to keep teaching our players how to be leaders rather than and being adults rather than being children.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see a lot of big results out of that because back to your point, soft skills are way more important than the hard skills. Like, yeah, I can teach you how to throw harder. I can teach you how to hit a ball better. Is that going to really move the needle forward in your life? It goes back to that 20-30 self. Your career is going to be done in 10 years, just to let you know, FYI.
Yep.
Unless you're lucky. Unless you're the 1% that get to make it to Major League Baseball.
1 of 1%.
Yeah, 1 of 1%. I mean, if you're 14 years old, you're very close to your career being ending.
Mm-hmm.
So the soft skills are so important, and youth sports is a breeding ground for leadership development, and I'm hoping that we can see more of that in the future, because again, that's why I love sports and that's why I'm in it.
That's why we're doing this.
Guys, that's this episode of The Closing Pitch. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. If you have not subscribed to the show, please subscribe. If you are a subscriber to the show, send this to a friend. If you hear or see a part in there, you're like, yes, this is exactly what we're dealing with right now. I need to send this to somebody. Send it to a friend, send it to your grandma, send it to your grandpa.
Tell them the minute mark. They don't have to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Tell them to listen to the 22-minute mark for 8 minutes.
I do that with Dave all the time. Like, hey, you need to listen to this 15-minute mark. So, guys, please do that. That's the biggest compliment that we could ever receive from you. Yes, we do love the reviews. Please have them coming, but the sharing of information is by far the biggest compliment we could ever receive. So, thank you guys so much. We'll catch you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Thank you for watching or listening or both to The Closing Pitch. If you would like to get your closing pitch featured on the show, we use a podcasting app called Anchor, where you can submit your statement or question via audio. Or what you can do is comment in the comment section of this post. We also accept direct messages. Please give us the A-OK if you do send us a DM to use your statement or question on the show. Last thing, please give us a review on your platform of choice. 5-star preferably, and we value your opinion, and this allows us to reach more people. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you in the next episode.